Let's work on connecting our backend to our React client. Let's head to within source of our React client, index.js. Here we're going to add all of the setup for Apollo Boost, and we want to inject Apollo into all of our components so we can use all of the different tools it provides to interact with our backend. So first we need to import Apollo Provider from the tool React Apollo. This makes Apollo available to all of our components with the help of React Context. And then we'll import Apollo Client from Apollo Boost. Note that Apollo Provider is brought in between a set of curly braces, and that's not the case for bringing in Apollo Client. This is a common source of errors. Next, we need to create our client. We can do so by saying new Apollo Client. The first thing that Apollo takes and is required is a URI. It needs the address to connect with our API to our backend, and the address for that is http localhost 8000/GraphQL and then ending in a /. That's important to note. We'll put our created Apollo client in a client variable, and once we have that, we will wrap our root component with the Apollo provider and we pass through our created client onto this client prop. Now we can save index.js, and within root we'll try executing a simple query that doesn't require any authentication to see if this Apollo setup is functioning correctly. So let's head to root.js, and as I mentioned earlier, React Apollo provides to us a couple of components that make executing queries and mutations very easy. To execute a query, all we need to do is import the query component from React Apollo, and now instead of this starting div, we can replace it with a set of query tags. Next, on a query prop, we need to specify what query we want to execute. And in this case, as an unauthenticated user, we can get all of the track data. So we'll put our query in a new variable called the getTracksQuery. We'll create this underneath our component. We're going to write these queries and mutations in the same syntax that we used in Graphical, and we're going to write this as a string, but in order to parse this correctly, we're going to use a special tool from Apollo Boost called GQL. So we'll import GQL from Apollo Boost, and this is going to make sure that the operation that we write out is executed properly. So the syntax for this is first GQL and then 2 backticks, and then we write our query between these sets of backticks. So for right now, just to test this out, we'll open up a set of curly braces, and from the tracks query, let's just get the ID, title, description, and URL. So we're passing this getTracksQuery to our query component with the help of the query prop. But where do we get our return data when this query resolves? Between our two query tags, we can add a set of curly braces and write an arrow function. And the way that this is written is known as a render prop. And within our render prop function, we can get access to a lot of different values if we destructure them from the parameters of the function. So once our query is executed, we can get data, loading, and error. Data will be what comes back when this is executed, when or if this is executed successfully. If we're in the process of loading, loading is going to return true, otherwise false. And if there's an error in executing this, it's going to come back on this error value. So first we need to check to make sure we're not in a loading or error state. So first we're going to say if loading, just return a simple div with the text loading. If there's an error, return a div with the text error. Otherwise, we can actually return our data, and for now, just to throw it on the screen, I'm going to put it between a set of div tags and interpolate it as JSON, as a JSON string, by saying JSON.stringify and pass in the data that we get.